Welcome to our conversation today. We're so thankful that you decided to join us. My name is Rachel, and I have a coworker and friend here, Clynt Reddy, joining us just for a conversation today.
I am so honored to be here, Rachel.
And I'm so just thankful for you taking time in your day to just come and have a conversation.
Well, this is an important conversation, right? And for us to have it is critical and valuable, but to know what this book is going to do and launch other people into conversations, I'm thrilled about that as well.
Yeah, I'm super excited, and just wanted to tell you a little bit of my heart and kind of where this conversation sparked even for me. I've had families, and I had a particular moment where someone came up to me, a mom who said, I'm a little nervous to talk to my kids about race and what's happening in our world today. And she asked my advice. So what should I do? Should I keep my kids inside? I don't really want them to be exposed. And I sat for a few days and I just was like, okay, this conversation has to start.
Yeah.
Even within our kids, not just adults or when you're of a certain age. And it started to spark something in me with this book. It's just like if we only knew what other people were experiencing on a daily basis when it comes to race, when it comes to the color of their skin, right? And I knew in that instant and in that moment, I had to use this as a resource to say, how can I help start this conversation? Start it. I know that's not where it ends and it shouldn't end, but I knew that I had to start the conversation of race and begin it even at a younger age than I think a lot of us think kids can handle it. Because I know working with kids that kids can understand and grasp so much more than we give them credit for. And so how can we begin this conversation just like us, in a home, at a coffee table, at your couch, in your living room? It's a simple step, but I think it's really, really important step. And so that's why I wanted you here today.
Well, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Let's talk.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so today I wanted to start this conversation. Start it even just with us. So thankful that you're here. Would you just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, your family dynamic, all those things?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Rachel. And this is really fun. I mean, just hearing the story about what's been stirring in you, and then to have not just the vision, but like the resolve to push it forward. Yeah. And now I'm seeing this beautiful book right in front of us. Like,
so fun.
I commend you.
Thanks.
Like, this is beautiful stuff, and it's an important conversation that I'm incredibly thankful that we get a chance to have together. So a little bit about me. Obviously, we work together, so that's really fun. And but obviously, work is a piece of our lives, but family is another critical component. And so for me, I'm married for about 8 years now, and I married kind of the homegrown Minnesota gal. Okay,
Andy, I love it.
So we're a interracial, biracial family, and I think I've read a couple articles talking about race in America and even across the world, but in America in particular, the statistics around interracial couples is only continuing to grow, and it's around 1 in 10 couples now, or 1 in 10 families that are coming from mixed backgrounds of some sort. And so we have 3 kids, and our first is Laker. He's our eldest, and his name's Laker. Not because people always ask me, like, you must love basketball.
Love the Lakers.
And I'm like, well, I do like basketball, but the reason we gave our son the name Laker was because, we're here, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and we wanted to give him a name that was kind of a shout out to his Minnesota roots. So this is the land of 10,000 lakes. And so that's why it's Laker.
That's so cool.
The Lakers played here, the Minneapolis Lakers back in the 50s, and then they moved to LA. So that's why people are like, why are they the Lakers? But because it's from Minnesota. So we got our eldest, he'll be 5 at the end of this year. Then we have Tate, he's our middle son, he'll be 3 in a couple months. And then we have a baby girl, Ivy is her name, and she just turned a year a couple weeks ago. So that's our family. And personally for me, I'm actually an immigrant to this country, came to the United States in the mid-90s from South Africa. And we're talking about race, and we all know the challenges of race happening in the United States. But I was born in a nation that also has had a really sad history with respect to race. Something called apartheid was a part of South African history, which really was, if you're familiar with Jim Crow, things that happened here in the United States, it really took that to a whole nother level. And so I grew up in communities, my parents and grandparents grew up in communities where the people that we lived around, that we shopped with, that we rode on buses with, same people. So if you were white, you lived in one area and you were afforded these things. If you were an African, you lived in another area. If you're Indian, like myself, you lived in another area. And so my ancestry and story is very well connected to really the sad history around race, not just in the United States, but all over the world.
Yeah. My first question is just maybe what is one challenge in communicating this topic of race, or has there been challenges in communicating that even to your kids at a young age?
Yeah, no, it's for sure a challenging conversation.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that, because it's intimidating.
Right.
And part of the reason it's intimidating, regardless if you have a homogenous family or a mixed family like mine, the challenge is that it's oftentimes so difficult to discern what your kids can handle. So I got a 1-year-old, and she can't talk yet, right? So can't really have a conversation there yet. And then I have a 3-year-old who is starting to vocalize, but is he at the spot cognitively to be able to have a conversation? Now, there's no doubt tons of research shows that kids are able to identify differences in skin color and things like that at a very young age, almost as young as 6 months. But can I have this conversation with my middle son? That's a challenge for me. Should I engage? Can I engage? Does he get it? Now, with our eldest, he's not that much older than Tate. He's 4 going on 5. And sometimes what is really like, it kind of hits you with a ton of bricks, is he's asking me the questions. Because he's hearing conversations, or he's watching PBS Kids and something comes up, and he's asking, like, Dad, what happened to George Floyd? George Floyd, the story here in Minneapolis that kind of sparked the unrest and the conversation, that necessary conversation about race in the United States again. And it's not just George Floyd's name, we know, unfortunately, way too many others. But he's asking me questions. Wow. And the challenging part is now I'm like, whoa. From my son Tate, who's like 3-ish, 2.5, 3-ish, to Laker, 4.5, 5, in just that 12 to 24 month period, it's like a light switch turned on. And like he's noticing things and he's asking things. And the challenge then is like, how do I pivot that quickly? Where it's like, Ivy, it's not even in my mind. Tate, I'm kind of thinking about it. And Laker, it's full force.
Right.
And so how do you, when you have kids at different ages, how are you able to navigate the fact that they're all in different stages as well?
Well, and I love that. I love that vulnerability piece. Even like you're saying, like it's challenging and we're trying to figure, like you're in the process of figuring that out. And I think that's been such my heart in this project, is just even as young as 3, like you're saying, and so much of development in kids and in their brain, right? Yeah. Like you're saying, you're not gonna you maybe wouldn't sit down Tate and show him the video, because that could be something that is traumatic and that could stick with him, right? So it's like, what are ways then to start even the awareness? And so that's why I love this project and I feel passionate about it.
No, that's your heart, because it's not just a book, right? What I love about what you're developing here is the felt needs for parents.
Yeah, and so that's where we just start talking about, like you're saying, color and skin, maybe the things that they can start to understand at that age. That's younger, that you're like, how do we, and a lot of research has shown also that by doing and just being parents, and how are you handling situations with race in front of your kids, they've talked about how that's like the most like insane thing for kids to watch, is how you're living your life and how you're interacting. Like, are you locking your doors at a certain time? Are you maybe going on like the other side of a street, right? When a certain person of color walks by. So that's been something really interesting as I've researched and talked to parents, right? Because I'm not a parent, so that's why, to me, you guys are the experts because you know you're in it. But just like I said, super thankful for the conversation. But so I love that. I love the vulnerability of just like, yeah, it is a challenge, and I think you hit it like on the head where it's like the age appropriateness is really key when you're talking to your kids. You're gonna talk differently to Tate than you are to Laker because of that age difference and what they're experiencing. So I think you've been a great resource for me with these conversations of race, and I know you've sent me articles, and I've been so thankful because my heart is just to don't have.
Sure.
And so my question would be, what's maybe best next step for families to continue to have this conversation in the home, or maybe what are practical ways that parents could start?
Well, and I'll answer that question really by reiterating how you're framing it. This idea that we don't know it all, and it actually isn't a knowledge gap. It's an experience gap.
That's really good.
So, in other words, what race is bringing to the surface in terms of the larger conversation we're having, both as a country, even as a world, and then particularly as families, is that who we are, our backgrounds, our skin colors, our cultural differences, impact the experiences we have as we go about our lives. And one of the things that we can help our kids and even help ourselves do in trying to understand what's happening here is to realize that we have an experience gap that we can only close by relationships with other people that have different experiences than ourselves. And they're able to notice things in us and in the world that we oftentimes, like you're suggesting, can't see. Not because we're unable, in the sense that like we don't have enough cognitive ability or emotional empathy. We just can't see because we don't have their eyes. We just can't experience it because we haven't walked on their feet. And so for me, a really important invitation for parents and families, for all of us, as we resource ourselves for the conversation, is to invite others into it.
I love that.
To take an audit almost of the relationships that we have in our circles and ask the question, like, how much homogeneity is there? Like, how many people have the same socioeconomic status that I do? How many have the same skin color? They live in the same area. You know, my wife and I live in South Minneapolis off 25th Avenue between 36th and 37th Street. 38th Street in Chicago was where George Floyd was killed. That's literally 12 blocks from my house. And so for us, the proximity to the unrest and to the trauma was a really impactful part for me. And now I have eyes to see that those living in the suburbs or in the rural areas or other parts of even downtown, they didn't necessarily see. And so for me, the invitation is, what can it look like to build around us a community of people that represents the diversity that's going to help us close the experience gap so we can understand better.
I love that. And I love what you said, like, it's not like you have to have knowledge and all the answers, right? Because we don't. And that's why I'm even having conversations, because I don't have all the answers. I'm never going to. But I feel like it puts me a little bit more at ease when it's like, no, we're closing the gap so that you can get more experiences. So that's tangible for me, right? And that's tangible for families to go out and experience, or take a little self-diagnosis and be like, what is our family exposed to? What are we not exposing them to that we should be, maybe, right? So,
and the danger there, right, is oftentimes we can look at this from a utilitarian, or like it's kind of like we're just trying to fill the gap, and then we use people. They become tokens for us to feel like I've done the audits, and I probably do need some poor people in my life or some black people in my life, and like all of a sudden now people become the means to an end. And the end is for us to like maybe lower anxiety levels, or to feel like we're not racist, or whatever that may. And so for me, it's also a very delicate invitation. That we're very mindful of the relationships we're trying to build, and we're not trying to build them just so that we can say, oh, I do have a black friend, I do know a poor person, and almost then try to like mitigate our own contributions to the hurt and the pain and the trauma in our world. regardless of who we are. And so for me, as people take steps toward that, both kind of an inventory of sorts of the relationships within their circles and potentially a pursuit of what it would look like to diversify those relationships, to be very careful behind the motivations behind that.
Yeah. Obviously, you and I both share something really huge in common, which is our faith, right? So we love Jesus and are really thankful. I'm really thankful for Jesus and what he's done for me.
Sure.
So with faith being a huge component of our lives, what has God been teaching you as a parent, as a main source of a communicator for your family? What's maybe even one thing that's just been sticking out to you that God's been revealing to you about this topic of race as a parent and as that communicator to your family?
Great, fantastic question. And you're right. I think the fact that you and I are people of faith, it informs quite a bit of how we approach this topic and why it's a passion.
Yeah.
And for me, what I'm drawn to is a picture at the end of the Bible. A vision that a guy named John has as he kind of gets almost a peek behind the curtain about what's coming to this world that has brokenness all a part of it. And he describes a moment where he says, and I saw people from every tribe, language, people, and nation. In other words, this last book of the Bible, a book we call Revelation, was an attempt to give us a forecast, a peek behind the curtain about what's coming to our world and to our lived experience. And what I draw from John's words there is that diversity is coming.
I love that.
He didn't, what he saw, he couldn't even just use one word to describe.
Right.
Every tribe, every language, every people, every nation. So to me, the vision of what Jesus is doing in this world and what the scriptures are pulling us forward to experience is a vision of diversity. And what that means for me as a parent or as a communicator in a church setting is that a key part to my goal is to prepare for that life. In other words, that's the future that's coming. And I do my children or our congregations or the relationships I have influence with, I do them a disservice if I don't prepare them for a life that's teeming with diversity.
Wow.
Which means it's a life that you have to be able to interact cross-culturally. You have to be able to understand and embrace differences. And it's not whitewashing. It's not, hey, we're all the same.
Right.
John didn't say we're all the same.
Right.
He said we're all different. But our differences point, they're channeled to a greater purpose and mission. And so for me, that's the passion that's welling in me, is that it's coming.
Yeah.
And we have to prepare and we have to help others prepare for that life that is there.
I love that. Wow, it's so good. Thank you again for just being here and having the conversation. I'm so excited for all that God is doing through this and that he is bringing diversity. And like you said, we are all different and it's beautiful and it's pointing to a greater purpose, right? So every tribe, every nation can know who Jesus is.
There you go.
And I love that. I think that's so obviously so exciting and just so much hope, I think, for our future. So thanks again for having this conversation today.
Thanks, Rachel.
Yes.
Great to be here.
Yes. Thank you for joining us for this conversation today. We are so thankful that you just came into our space and you allowed us into yours. Like we said, this is a normal conversation. This isn't anything where we're experts, but we're just teaming together to just start that conversation. And that's where I want to challenge and encourage you, is in your family and in your home to start the conversation. And that is what this book and this project and this passion of mine is all about, is for you to start this within your home with your kids, that it is a conversation worth having. And I hope that it doesn't end here. I hope this is just that this book can be a launching pad, a resource for you to start. Like I said, this is not the end. It doesn't stop at a conversation. This is where it begins. And so I hope through this book and through this project that it launches you into that. With this book, we also have age-appropriate conversation starter cards for 3 to 5-year-olds, 6 to 12-year-olds, and 12 to 18-year-olds that will help you with every single purchase. It'll come free. It'll just help you to further start that conversation. So we're so thankful that you joined us today, and can't wait to continue this conversation.